Hello lovely people, how are you all today? I hope you're fine and dandy, and I hope you're embracing this new year. It's so exciting, isn't it? I think we're all on that verge of hysteria at the thought of planting more seeds. Yeah, I can't wait. But hold on, it's a little bit too soon. I reckon we're a goodly 2 months off doing any sowings yet, or at least I am with the way I sow. So we have to be a little bit patient and do other things instead. So today, for instance, I'm in the kitchen, obviously. I'm so excited because I've got a couple of friends around this afternoon for a really late lunch. Just looking at the clock. I've got about an hour and 3/4 to get things ready. Get a wriggle on, Vivi. One of my friends is a meat eater, so I'm going to do this recipe because in the past when I've done it for friends who are meat eaters, they've loved it. They've loved it so much they want the recipe. They've loved it so much that I've turned my back for 2 minutes, come back around again, and they've scoffed the leftovers. It's my cabbage pie. Finally, I'm going to show you guys my cabbage / kale / brassica pie. It's an absolutely gorgeous, yummy scoff for the winter months. I know it doesn't sound much, cabbage pie, give it a go. I know you'll be delighted. I'm using a combination of some fresh ingredients and some stored ingredients, and a couple of shop bought ingredients, which I'll explain in a minute. But it's a fantastically kind of warming. There's something about winter where we just want to eat kind of stodge and comfort ourselves. So although you're kind of going to get the stodge feel from this, it's not stodgy. So I'm using tomatoes, fantastic for you guys, for your for the lycopene, for protection against testicular cancer. Get your tomatoes down your throats, guys. I'm using an onion, good old onion, and we all know by now they're fantastic antimicrobial properties and great for our blood. The star of the show, of course, is the cabbage. You could do this with cabbage, kale, any of your brassicas, with things like broccoli and the purple sprouting broccoli. I wouldn't use the florets because they'll disintegrate too much, and the lovely thing about this meal is the bite that the cabbage gives, which is what I think the meat eaters like. You could, though, instead of using the florets, if, like me, most of your broccoli has finished giving you the nice florets, you could use the leaves in this recipe. They'd work fine. And then I'm going to add some mushrooms for that umami. Is it umami? It always makes me want to say it silly. Umami. Uvavu. Oh no, that's from Reeves and Mortimer, isn't it? Anyway, sorry, digressing. Yeah, so the mushrooms give it that certain je ne sais quoi, and again I think it's a taste sensation or a hit in that part of the tongue that meat eaters like, but it also helps to make the gravy of the pie. Brilliant. And here's the great thing about mushrooms, we can get a little bit of vitamin D from them. Yay! So important in the winter months. I don't know about where you are in the world, but in England, and I don't know for Scotland because it's so far north, but in England, we can really only get vitamin D from the sun in the months of sort of March through to about October. So it means that November, December, January, February, we are not making vitamin D from the sunshine. Hopefully, as gardeners, we've made enough in the summer and the autumn, but if not, whack some mushrooms into your diet. I'd like to tell you how many, I'm not sure, but just, add them where you can because any little helps. Right, I'm going to give you a quick squiz of the ingredients. Oh, don't the ingredients alone look yummy? So what I've got is, 4, 6, 7 mushrooms. I'm just going to try and grab, it's kind of like a handful. I've got big hands. I'm so sorry guys, I just don't do weights, I can't remember things in weights, so I kind of just do everything visually, but sort of 6 or 7, they're not huge mushrooms, but it's about a handful of mushrooms. Tomatoes, these are some of the ones that were in the freezer, which is why they're a little bit separated looking. That's the equivalent of about a tin of tomatoes. How much is a tin of tomatoes? Maybe 250, 300 grams or so. If you were using fresh tomatoes, you could use maybe 2 or 3 large ones, although realistically you wouldn't be using fresh because you wouldn't have any fresh tomatoes around at the same time as your cabbage, or certainly not at this time of year. But they're from the freezer. I always use my frozen tomatoes first and save the bottled ones until last, just in case the freezer breaks, but so far so good, freezer's fine. Onion, just, you know, a nice big healthy sized onion. The magic ingredient, I'm going to be using some dried dill. Dill is a really, really lovely herb with brassicas. I haven't grown any, unfortunately, so I've had to buy this, never mind, but it does remind me to put dill on my list of seeds to get for this year, because I'm finally hoping to develop my herb garden this year. Yay! And then the only other thing is pastry. Now, sorry, excuse me. In terms of pastry, I guess it's going to be about 250, 300 grams of pastry. So you can make it with short crust pastry or with puff pastry. If I was doing this with short crust pastry, that's a little tongue twister, I would certainly make it myself. However, I did have some puff pastry in the back of the freezer, and because I'm going to do this for friends, the puff pastry makes it extra special, so I'm going to splash out on them and use the puff. There is no way that I have the time and patience to make my own puff pastry. Right, let's get chopping and get this lot on the go. Once you've given everything a chop, that's the mushrooms, the cabbage and the onions, into quite small bite-sized pieces, in a bit of oil and water, start sweating off the onions and the cabbage. Let me show you my size of pieces. Give an example. So they're just sort of little bite-sized pieces of cabbage. What I did in chopping the cabbage, the very thick stalk bit in the centre, I've chopped out, but I'm not going to chuck it because I'm going to nibble on it as I'm cooking. So you just want the less, you still want that crunch and bite, which is why this is so lovely with the Savoy or with the kale. Give them a bit of a scrudge around. Now let those just sort of sweat down, wilt a bit for about 10 minutes or so, and then we can start adding the other ingredients. Once the cabbage and onion have had about 10 minutes, might be a little bit quicker, just get them softened down a bit, then we can add all the other ingredients in one go. So the tomatoes, in you go lovelies. The gorgeous mushrooms. Oh, I've had to stop myself picking at the mushrooms. I love raw mushrooms. And then finally, the genius of the show, I'm going to do a really generous, it's probably like about 2 teaspoons. Actually, let's have a bit more. I love dill. Let's give it all a good scrudge around. Now, at this stage, it's not going to look particularly appetising, but it's smelling gorgeous already. So give it a good scrudge around. Lid back on. I'm going to turn the heat right down. Now I'm going to leave that for sort of 15 to 20 minutes. I want it to bubble down and get really nice and thick. Actually, having looked at it, I might add a little drop of hot water because the tomatoes aren't fresh. They're not particularly juicy, but I'll have a look as we go along. Now, at this stage, you can do one of 2 things. Hang on, let me come back over and speak to you properly. So, I've done this in the past where the filling I've made the day before, put it in the fridge overnight, and actually it's really yummy. I think those flavours just really meld together even better. So you could finish cooking it at this stage, pop it in the fridge, and then tomorrow, let's say, tomorrow is when you're wanting to cook it or your guests are coming or whatever, then you can fill it as I'll show you later on. Because I'm going to do this today, so for my guests in, time's ticking on, an hour and 15 minutes, it's at this stage you want to think about preheating the oven. So you want it at 220 degrees centigrade. Oh, I should have checked what that is in Fahrenheit and gas marks for you all. Go online, convert it online, 220 degrees centigrade. Now my oven, it only takes about 5 minutes to come to temperature, so I'm not going to do it quite yet, but what I am going to get on with now is the pastry. So if you're making your own short crust pastry or puff pastry, God love you if you make your own puff pastry, who does that anymore? Think about doing that before you even start with the pan and all those ingredients, because if you're making your own, you'll want to make it and then pop it in the fridge to rest for half an hour, and actually that timing works brilliantly. So if you've done the pastry first, pop it in the fridge, by the time you do everything in the pan, pretty much half an hour will have elapsed. I've got my ready-made puff pastry because I'm a naughty cheat, but also it's a bit luxury that I'd like to give to my friends, so I'm going to start in on the pastry now. When I built my kitchen eons ago, one of the things I made sure of was this countertop is extra deep. It's much deeper than an off-the-shelf countertop, and also the whole kitchen is raised because I'm tall. So even though I'm not any great cook, I don't do a massive amount of cooking. Well, I mean, I cook every day, but in terms of sort of being bakey, chefy kind of stuff, I just don't. But when I do, and I make my pastry, I want to have enough space to work. That's going to be my top. Let's just set it aside. So for my bottom, I need a bit more length. For my bottom, I need more length. I could do with more length and less width. So I'm just going to give it a really gentle little roll out. Let's look. Now, because I'm doing this for friends, I'm going to do it, all of this should serve 4. But what I normally do, if it's just for me, I actually make this up as 4 individual portions, and once I've filled my 4 portions, I'll put 1 in the cooker to eat now, as it were, and then the other 3 I freeze. This freezes perfectly well. It freezes really nicely actually, and then it's like a sort of little complete meal. Especially in those days when I used to come home from shifts feeling very tired and not feeling like cooking. Oh, splodge it in. Was it big enough? So whatever your dish you're using, roll it out to size. You don't need me to tell you that. Oh, it's a bit skimpy on the sides. These flappy bits, I'll flap over and it'll be really gorgeous and crispy crunchy. So that's done, the lid is ready. Basically we'll just wait for the filling to finish. It's got about another 5 minutes. The oven is now on to preheat, and then we can get on with filling, getting it in the oven, and more importantly, getting ready to eat it. Hubble bubble toil and trouble, this is smelling yum. So it's reduced a fair bit. I didn't actually need to add any extra water. The mushrooms started to release their moisture beautifully. Oh my goodness, I can't wait. I can't wait. I could probably eat all of this all on my own. Do you know what? Let's just tip the whole pan upside down. Hang on, let's get another oven mitt. Oh no, I don't need it. Let's do it this way. Yum, scrum, diddly yum. So like I say, it doesn't really look much. It's one of those things where you're just going to have a little bit of faith in me, hopla, and try it. So just spread it out in there. It's the usual issue I have of after 20 minutes or so of doing anything in the kitchen, I want the result. I want to eat now, please. So give the top a little pinch, squidge all the way round. What I'll do in the oven is I'll have a little pan underneath this just in case it does start to bubble out in a naughty fashion. With these bits I'm just going to fold them back in because, oh my goodness, who doesn't like chunks of puff pastry? Yum scrumdiddle. If you were being a bit arty about it, you could cut these corners off, cut them into shapes to put on the top and be all fancy pants, but I'm not fancy pants. Couple of holes to let steam out. Now let's get this gorgeous thing into the oven. So the oven's preheated, as I mentioned earlier, to 220. We're going to bake this now for about 30 minutes. Your oven may vary if you've got a fan assisted. I'd like any sort of assistance in the kitchen. Oh, scotchio! So pop that in the centre of the oven, 30 minutes. Keep an eye on it, maybe have a little look in at about 25 minutes or so. See how it's doing. And then we'll come back and we'll test it. It's in the oven. What I should have just quickly mentioned is that stage where the pastry hasn't been cooked, obviously the inside has been, the filling has been cooked in the pan. Once you've filled the pie dish, the pastry lid is on the top, the pastry still hasn't been cooked. It's at that stage you can then freeze it. So get it chilled down in the fridge and then pop it in the freezer. If you are doing it from frozen, you need to cook it for about 40 to 45 minutes. Again, depends on your oven. It works perfectly well from frozen. It's gorgeous. It's gorgeous hot. It's gorgeous warm. I have on a couple of occasions actually cooked it hot in an individual portion, put that portion inside, I've got like a sort of a quilted, fleecy lined little sort of food sack I made, wrap it up and take it to the garden. Couple of hours of work in the garden on a cold winter's day, out it comes, it's still warm, really scrummy. I've also had it cold, so what I would say is it's nice cold, it's okay, but warm or hot, it's really good. So if you're like me, if you're on your own, it does serve four. You can either make the portion, make the ingredient sizes, quarter them and make one, or like I do, make up 4 individual portions, have 1 today and 3 for the freezer. And it's great because it's like a complete little meal in one go. So you pull it out of the freezer, get it in the oven, you don't have to cook, don't have to think about anything, boom, there you go, meal done. Now I've got to wait for it to cook. I'll see you in half an hour. So long. It's the moment of truth. Oh, blast of heat. Oh, crikey. So I'm going to quickly get the oven shut again because I've got a couple of little really tiny spuds in there to bake. I actually don't think this needs anything else with it, but it's just in case my friends are feeling really starving, greedy. 15-20 minutes till they get here, I've got to get a wriggle on. So, oh my goody goodness. Oh, I just poked the pastry and made a hole. Never mind, let me show you. Oh, sorry, goodness me. There we are, fresh out of... I just poked that hole. I'm so bad. Oh my goodness, when it gets stuck in. So like I say, the puff pastry is a little bit or a little bit of a luxury. It would be much cheaper to make if you were just making your own short crust pastry, but it's a treat for my pals. I love them to bits, they deserve it. So, now normally at this point in filming a recipe, I would give myself a portion, look at me waving my knife around, I'd give myself a portion and eat it on camera with you to share. I don't know whether I should cut into it or just leave it as it is to serve up to my friends well, very soon. The other thing to say is you could use an egg. I don't eat eggs, but if you have your own chickens and you've got an egg to spare, you could do a little egg wash to glaze it so it comes up all glazed and shiny. But seriously, I ain't got time for no washing and no pies. I just want to eat them. Yes, I know, double negative. Sue me. Right, I think I'm gonna go in and show you a portion. Actually, let me just tip you down so you can see. Ooh, stiff tripod. And then I think what I'll do is I'll show you this portion and then I'll see if I can put it back in the pie dish afterwards. Hold on, I'm feeling a bit dyspraxic suddenly. It's not a particularly elegant way to do it, but Gertrude, let's be having you. Oh, I left half the filling behind. Oh, gosh, it smells so good. Oh my goody goodness. Oh, I've got it all over my oven mitt, never mind. I've tricked it all over the board as well. Okay, let me give you a little closer look. Gosh, it's yummy. Now, isn't that a meal fit for your bodies? So you see what I mean about it? I think it's a meal on its own. That's a full plate of food. Gorgeosity. Yum. Right. On that note, I am going to somehow try to get it back into the pie dish and then pop it back in the oven just to keep it warm. I might have a little nibble on the way before they get here in 10 minutes. So for now, I'm going to say cheerio to you all. Happy scoffing your winter veg. Happy playing in your kitchens. Happy planning the garden for next year, because I'm sure that's what we're all up to at the moment. But in the meantime, I will hopefully see you all again soon. Just be happy. Take care, everyone.